Hello friends, I am Sameer Kalia, Associate Professor, PG Department of Physics, DAV College, Amritsar. In this lecture series, which I will be starting from today, in the part 1, I will start with transistors and from the historical background of transistors. We'll go on to deal with other types of transistors apart from BJTs, that is FETs, MOSFETs, some special devices like UJTs, SCRs, and then we'll move on to digital electronics. I hope after the end of this lecture series, you will be able to deal with most of the topics which are common at undergraduate and postgraduate level of electronics. Let's start with the historical backgrounds of transistors. Even before the start of the transistor, the electronics was very much there, and that was basically because of the use of vacuum tubes. Let's say we are very much familiar with a diode, I hope. This is a PN junction diode, but before the invention of this PN junction diode, we had been using what we call as a diode wall. A diode wall in a vacuum tube had two terminals. One terminal was basically an electron emitter. This was an electron emitter which was emitting electron because of with the help of what you can say thermoionic emission. A small filament which has got low ionization potential is heated up and electrons are ejected from that material. Those electrons are accelerated towards the other plate, towards the other terminal, which was given a slight positive potential. As the electron reach over there, they cause some current to flow. Now, in this diode, what is happening? That electron can flow from, say, terminal 1 to terminal 2, but they cannot flow from terminal 2 to terminal 1. So this is acting as a current wall. This is acting as a current wall, as a normal wall which can flow the flow of, which can control the flow of, let's say, air in one direction. That is what we call as an air wall. We have got a water wall which can allow the water to flow in only in one direction. Similarly, over here, it is a diode wall which is basically a current wall. It can allow the electrons to flow in one direction, but doesn't allow the electrons to come back to the same direction. The same thing can be obtained using what we call as a diode wall. But this diode is made up of PN junction. We know that there are two types of semiconductors, the P-type semiconductors and the N-type semiconductors. P-type semiconductors have got a higher value of a higher hole density, whereas an N-type semiconductor has got higher electron density. When a junction is formed across a single bar of silicon, one side is doped with a trivalent impurity to make it a P-type semiconductor, and the other side is doped with a pentavalent impurity to create it, say, N-type semiconductor. This has got plenty of electrons and this has got plenty of holes. Now what happens, as soon as a junction is formed, the holes and electrons, they move towards each other. Make it a point that I have not connected any battery yet. This was a junction which just got formed in the factory, you may say, in the fabrication unit. This diode was formed, but there is no battery connected yet to this junction. Now what happens, as holes and electrons try to move towards each other, they create a depletion region in the center. In this depletion region, what happens? We have got, this region is depleted of its charge carriers. It doesn't have any free charge carrier available to it. And what happens? This P-type semiconductor, which was initially neutral, has lost some of its holes, so it acquires deficiency of positive charges, which can be accounted for as if it is a negatively charged. And this region, which has got plenty of electrons, but actually it was overall neutral semiconductor, as it loses its electrons to the holes during the process of electron hole neutralization, this acquires a deficiency of negative electrons, which can be treated as slight positive charge. So as the junction is formed, after some time you may feel as if, when I say some time, it means a few microseconds rather. After some time you may feel that this side of the junction has acquired slight negative charge, this side has acquired slight positive charge, and it seems as if a battery has been connected across this junction. Let us understand this thing that this is an unbiased junction. We haven't connected any battery in reality to this junction. The deficiency of negative on one side and deficiency of positive charge on the other side is behaving as if a battery is connected across this junction. This battery is termed as fictitious battery. Now, with the movement of these holes try to go to the N region, as there are plenty of electrons available there, but the negative available over there, sorry, I put it wrongly, it was negative over here, no, it was correct. As the hole wishes to move towards the N region, this positive charge over here, or you may say the positive terminal of the fictitious battery, tries to repel these holes and restrict their movement across the junction. So small current flows as the junction is formed, but that current stops after some time as the fictitious battery hinders their motion. Now, this should be understood from the point of view of their Fermi levels as well. So what is the Fermi level? Fermi level is that level, that energy level, below which all levels are filled and above which all levels are empty. According to the Fermi-Dirac distribution, according to Fermi-Dirac distribution, the probability of filling a state is given as, let's say the energy level is U. The probability of any energy level to be filled according to Fermi-Dirac distribution of electrons in an atom would be given as Pu is equal to 1 by 1 e raised to the power U minus Uf divided by Kt plus 1. It is equal to 1 by e raised to the power U minus Uf by Kt plus 1. Now, three cases may arise. If U is less than Uf, if U is less than Uf, that means I'm talking about a level whose energy is less than the Fermi level, then U minus Uf will become negative and e raised to the power as t approaches infinity, as t approaches 0 Kelvin, what will happen? This denominator is going to 0. This means that U minus Uf over Kt will become negative infinity. So it will acquire a value equal to 1 by e raised to the power minus infinity plus 1, which is equal to 1. That means the probability of that level being filled is exactly equal to 1. What will happen to a level whose energy is more than Fermi energy? What will happen to a level whose energy is more than Fermi energy if U is greater than Uf? In this case, U is greater than Uf, so U minus Uf over Kt will become e raised to the power plus infinity as t approaches 0. Now, this becomes 0, and that means the probability of this level of being filled is exactly 0. So practically I can define Fermi level as that level below which the probability of a level being filled is 1 and above which the probability of being filled is 0. But what about that particular Fermi level? What is its probability of being filled? Let us find its value at T equal to room temperature. At room temperature. So probability at room temperature of Fermi level being filled, that is U equal to Uf, would be given as Pu is equal to 1 e raised to the power 0 plus 1. That is equal to 1 by 2. That means Fermi level can be defined as a level whose probability of being filled is exactly 50% at room temperature. This can also be understood with the help of its graphical distribution. If I draw a graph between the energy and the probability of that level being filled, the graph is something like this. The probability is 1 for U less than Uf and probability is 0 for U greater than Uf. But what about other levels? As the temperature increases to say room temperature, the electrons from the filled levels get excited to the empty levels, and that means the probability becomes half for U equal to Uf. Now this is the definition of Fermi level. I can draw the Fermi level for p-type and n-type semiconductor and consequently the Fermi level of complete p-n junction. Let's do it. The Fermi level for a p-n junction can be drawn like this. Say this is p side and this is n side and this is the depletion region. Now over here we have got a Fermi level. In the p side the Fermi level lies close to the valence band and somewhere over here. Whereas in case of n-type semiconductor the Fermi level lies close to the conduction band, close to bottom of conduction band, and it is drawn with the help of this dotted line. Now think of an electron somewhere over here, which is in the n side and which wish to cross over to the p side by crossing the depletion region. Now it will have to face a potential barrier. Let's say I define this potential barrier by the voltage VB. Now what happens if an electron wishes to cross over to the n side, to the p side from n side? It will have to cross over using a particular, it must have minimum energy to cross over to that region. If it doesn't have that much energy, it will not be able to cross over. That means that if you want the current to flow across the junction, you will have to provide this electron some way, some energy. And that way of providing it energy is by connecting it to a battery. If you connect a battery in such a way that the negative terminal of the battery is connected to n side and positive terminal of the battery is connected to p side, I'll call it forward biasing. And if I do the other way around, it is termed as reverse biasing. Let's see how the current will flow through a diode in forward and reverse biasing. Let's say I've got a diode and I connect it to an external battery. Now in this way, the positive side of the battery is connected to p side of the p-n junction, and negative side of the battery is connected to n side of the p-n junction diode. An ammeter to measure the current and a voltmeter to record the voltage. Let's say I take this battery to be of variable potential. Now as I increase the voltage of this battery, what will happen? It will try to push over the holes from the p side to the n side. If there is enough potential difference applied to cross over that potential barrier, which I was referring to earlier, the current will start to flow. And graphically, it can be shown like this. Initially, if the voltage provided is very, very small, only a small current, let's say of the order of a few microamperes, will flow across the junction. But as soon as the voltage provided is sufficient so that the electrons can cross over the barrier to the other side, the current will rise suddenly in an exponential manner. This is what we call as the VI characteristics of a p-n junction diode in forward biasing. This graph, you may look at it as if a person is sitting on his knees. This looks like the knee of a person sitting on the ground. That's why this voltage at which the current suddenly starts to rise is termed as knee voltage. It can be calculated mathematically as, just graphically rather. If you draw a tangent over here and a tangent on the other side, the point where two tangents cross over is that voltage which we define as Vk. This Vk is the voltage where a diode starts to conduct in forward biasing. This knee voltage typically is of the order of 0.7 volt for germanium made diode, and it is 1.1 volt for a silicon diode. Now, what will happen in case of reverse biasing? If I reverse the battery, that means I connect P side to the negative of the battery and N side to the positive of the battery, what will happen? We can see now from this Fermi level diagram that this electron doesn't get enough energy to cross over to the other side, that is the P side, rather it is being pulled back. That means this electron would not be able to cross over to the other side and will not conduct. Same thing will happen to the holes on the P side. That means they won't be able to cross over the junction and there will be no current flowing across this PN junction diode. So even if large voltage is applied, there are diodes available which don't conduct even up to 400 volts, 1000 volt. So even if at this voltage, the diode does not conduct in reverse biasing. Although, if voltage applied is so much that it can knock out the electrons from their covalent bond or create an avalanche, then the current can suddenly increase, and that is what we call as the diode breakdown or reverse breakdown or avalanche breakdown. This voltage, where a diode starts to conduct in reverse bias, is termed as an avalanche breakdown voltage. Now, a diode, obviously we don't want it to get burnt out. That means to undergo a breakdown. That means we operate diode in safe voltages. That means diode will be in a position, diode will conduct in forward biasing but doesn't conduct in reverse bias. That means it is also acting as a current wall, as a diode wall based on vacuum tube technology was doing. This diode, made up of semiconductors, can perform the same things as a diode wall used to do in earlier days. Similarly, as I have elaborated in this part, that a diode valve was replaced by PN junction diode. Similarly, a triode valve was replaced by a transistor. And similarly, other devices were made. So there were devices based on vacuum tube technology which were performing certain things, and now we have shifted over to the semiconductor-based devices. For device by device, we'll see that there are devices in semiconductor physics which perform the same things as a vacuum tube technology diode, vacuum tube technology-based device was doing. So, with the benefits of semiconductor physics, which we'll discuss in some other lecture, we have completely shifted over from vacuum tube technology to the semiconductor physics technology. So I think this is good enough for part 1 of this lecture. In the coming lectures, I'll discuss the comparison of the triode walls and the transistors. Thank you.